Greetings, Lawmasters. Tonight our chronicle covers a very specific, very lucrative hobby practiced by the shadowed elite of Tamriel, the redistribution of wealth. We aren't talking about raiding ancient Nordic barrows for dusty septims or stripping bandit corpses of their fur armour. No, tonight we are looking at the citizens who walk the paved streets in fine velvet, the ones who sneer at the common rabble, unaware that the Dragonborn is currently crouching directly behind them with a pickpocket skill of 100. We are going to examine 15 specific individuals who are walking loot boxes, carrying surprising fortunes, rare keys, and enchanted heirlooms right in their pockets. The sun is setting over the tundra, casting long golden shadows across the plains, and the guards are switching shifts, their torches flickering to life against the stone walls. It is the perfect time to slip into the shadows. Let's be honest though, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to the Cloud District without some serious enchanted gear, or at least a very quick finger on the load game button. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I always love seeing how global our guild has become. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The winds of Whiterun are gentle tonight, carrying the scent of roasting venison from the stalls and the faint metallic ring of Adrian Avenici's hammer hitting steel. The city is the heart of Skyrim, a trade hub where wealth flows like the White River below, and walking these streets, usually with a strut that suggests he personally laid the cobblestones, is a Redguard noble named Nazeem. He is the first target on our list, not necessarily because he carries the most gold in the province, though his pockets are certainly well lined, but because relieving him of his possessions is a rite of passage for every thief, assassin, and honest adventurer who has ever set foot in the hold. Nazeem is a fascinating case study in perceived wealth versus tangible assets. As the Dragonborn slips into a crouch behind him near the market stalls, watching the detection eye icon slowly close into a flat line, we get a chance to observe the man in his natural habitat. He is currently berating a market vendor, likely Carlotta or Isolde, boasting about the quality of produce from his own land. He wears fine clothes, the standard uniform of the mercantile elite in Skyrim, dyed in rich, earthy tones that signify status without the gaudiness of the radiant raiment found in Solitude. To the untrained eye, he is simply a successful businessman. To the master thief, he's a walking collection of insecurities wrapped in expensive fabric. Reaching into his pocket, carefully, so as not to alert the guards patrolling near the Gildergleam, we find the expected assortment of levelled gold. Depending on the Dragonborn's own experience level, Nazeem might be carrying anywhere from 50 to a few hundred septims, walking around money that most farmers would need to save for months to accrue. But the gold is boring, it's just currency. What makes Nazeem a secretly rich target is what else he carries, and what those items tell us about his life. Tucked away next to the gold is a specific key, the key to Chillfurrow Farm. This is the core in-game fact that anchors Nazeem's haughty attitude. He isn't lying about owning land. Chillfurrow Farm is a very real, functioning agricultural estate located just outside the city walls. If you were to take this key and head out to the property, you would find Wilmoth, his employee, toiling away in the fields. The farm produces wheat and cabbage, staples of the Skyrim diet, and judging by the shipment crates, business is steady. Nazeem actually is a landed gentleman, a member of the landed gentry who contributes to the food supply of the hold. However, the disconnect between his projected status and his actual inventory is where things get interesting. While rifling through his pockets, you might notice something missing. There is no house key for a property inside Whiterun. This brings us to a piece of obscure lore that explains the strange, transient existence of Whiterun's wealthiest snob. If you check the game files or dive deep into the creation kit, you can find a key to a property called Wintersand Manor. In the lore, the Wintersand family is an old, established clan in Hammerfell and Skyrim. Nazeem and his wife Ahlam are members of this house. Originally, the developers intended for Nazeem to have a large physical manor inside the walls of Whiterun, befitting his dialogue about the Cloud District. However, due to space constraints or development time, the physical house was cut from the final game. This creates a hilarious reality for our pickpocketing endeavour. We are robbing a man who boasts about the Cloud District, yet because his manor was erased from existence by the gods or the developers, he is forced to sleep in a rented room at the Drunken Huntsman. Every night, after spending his day insulting the Battleborns and Greymanes, Nazeem trudges down to the lower district, pays his coin to Elrindir, and sleeps in a common hunting lodge. It adds a layer of tragic comedy to the theft. When you steal his gold, you aren't just taking his spending money, you're likely stealing his rent for the week. There is a prevalent fan theory that attempts to explain this discrepancy in-universe, suggesting that Nazeem isn't actually rich at all, but is rather drowning in debt. The theory posits that the farm is failing, or that the upkeep costs are too high, forcing him to sell his manor and move into the Huntsman while maintaining the facade of a wealthy magnate. Fans argue that his desperate need to be seen in the Cloud District, the Jarl's palace area, is actually him trying to curry favour or secure loans to keep his estate afloat. He isn't advising the Jarl on political matters, he's likely begging the steward, Proventus Avenici, for a tax break. But back to the inventory. Aside from the farm key and the gold, Nazeem often carries a dagger, usually of steel or better quality depending on the level scaling. It's a pristine weapon, unused, likely purchased more for ornamentation than self-defense. If the Dragonborn has the perfect touch perk, the ultimate pickpocketing skill, they can strip Nazeem of his clothes entirely. The fine clothes he wears are valued significantly higher than standard farm attire, often selling for a decent amount of gold to a fence like Tanelia in the Ragged Flagon. There is a certain poetic justice in leaving Nazeem standing in his undergarments in the middle of the market district, shivering in the Skyrim chill, while he continues to ask passers-by if they get to the Cloud District very often. It's also worth noting the jewellery. Like many high-status NPCs, Nazeem's inventory often generates a ring or a necklace. These are usually enchanted with minor buffs, perhaps fortify health or fortify barter, suggesting that even he knows he needs a little magical assistance to survive the social climate of Whiterun. Snatching a silver garnet ring from his pocket without him noticing is satisfying, but the real treasure is the silence that follows. His wife, Ahlam, is another aspect of Nazeem's hidden wealth narrative. If you listen to her dialogue, she spends her days at the Temple of Kinnereth healing the sick, and her nights complaining about her husband. She explicitly states that he kisses the Jarl's backside, and she jokes that she looks for the war to take him. Some players speculate that if you pickpocket Nazeem successfully, Ahlam is the one silently cheering you on from the temple benches. She carries her own key to the non-existent Wintersand Manor, a ghost key to a ghost house, a shared delusion of grandeur between a husband who talks too much and a wife who has checked out of the marriage entirely. The act of picking Nazeem's pocket is almost a tutorial for the rest of Skyrim's elite. He is the perfect practice dummy, arrogant, distracted, and loaded with high-value, low-weight items. He represents the entry level of our list. He has the appearance of wealth, the attitude of a king, but his pockets reveal the truth of a man living in a hotel clinging to a farm key as his only tether to nobility. As we secure the gold and the key, leaving Nazeem lighter but none the wiser, the sun dips fully below the horizon. The torches of Whiterun burn brighter now, illuminating the path to the city gates. We have relieved the Cloud District's loudest advocate of his burden, but there are far wealthier targets out there. Nazeem is merely a nuisance with a heavy purse. Our next target, however, is not someone you rob for fun. She's someone you rob with trembling hands, knowing that if you are caught, the guards won't just arrest you, they might just disappear you entirely. We must leave the central plains of Whiterun and travel southeast, toward the golden autumnal forests of the Rift. The air gets cooler here, crisp with the scent of falling leaves and the stagnant, murky water of the canal. We are heading to Riften, a city built on corruption and mead, to find the woman who truly runs things from the shadows. Where Nazeem pretends to have power, this next target actually holds the strings of the entire city in her gloved hand. The transition from the clean, open air of Whiterun to the damp fog of Riften is palpable. The soundscape shifts from the roar of the wind to the creaking of wood and the scurrying of skeevers near the docks. We are hunting a matriarch, a business mogul, and a woman who has likely ordered more assassinations than the Dark Brotherhood itself. Tighten your boots and check your invisibility potions, because we are about to step into the territory of the Black-Briars. Riften is a city that feels like it's sinking, both literally into the lake and metaphorically into moral decay. The wooden walkways creak underfoot, coated in a perpetual layer of moisture from the misty canal below. It's a place where shadows seem to stretch a little longer, and where eye contact is generally avoided unless you're looking for a fight or a fence. And moving through this murky ecosystem like a shark in dark water is Maven Black-Briar. Maven isn't just rich, she is the economic engine of the Rift. Finding her is easy enough. She holds court either in the main hall of Mistveil Keep, whispering poison into the Jarl's ear, or more commonly prowling the floor of the Black-Briar meadery, ensuring her workers are sufficiently terrified. As we approach her, the air feels heavier, charged with the kind of authority that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Unlike Nazeem, who demands respect, Maven simply assumes it, and enforces it with the threat of the Dark Brotherhood. The Dragonborn creeps along the wooden rafters of the meadery, or slips behind the throne in the Jarl's longhouse. The stealth indicator is a precarious open eye, flickering as guards patrol nearby. Stealing from Maven Black-Briar feels like petting a sleeping saber cat. Even if you succeed, you're left wondering if it's truly safe to walk away. Peering into her inventory, the first thing that strikes you is the sheer quality of her personal effects. Maven doesn't carry junk. You won't find a wooden ladle or a loose carrot in her pockets. Instead, you find gold, and lots of it. Her leveled gold amount is consistently higher than almost any other non-merchant NPC in the game. While a standard citizen might carry 20 septims, Maven often strolls around with several hundred, the petty cash of a woman who owns the town's primary export. But the gold is overshadowed by the keys. Maven is a keymaster of the Rift, and each key in her pocket tells a story of her expansive influence. First, there is the key to Black-Briar Manor. This unlocks her private residence in town, a heavily guarded home that contains even more loot, including a Brand-Shei stone, one of the 24 gems needed to restore the crown of Brand-Shei. Stealing the key from her person is often the safest way to gain entry, bypassing the expert-level lock on the front door. Then there is the key to Black-Briar Lodge. This is the core in-game fact that demonstrates her reach beyond the city walls. The lodge is her country estate, located east of Riften, where she keeps her mercenary guards and her prized horse, Frost. During the quest Promises to Keep, players are tasked with stealing Frost, and having the key beforehand makes the heist significantly smoother. The lodge is also where she hosts her private, likely illicit business meetings away from the prying eyes of the Jarl's court. It's a fortress of luxury in the middle of the wilderness, filled with expensive wines and rare ingredients. A more subtle item often found in her inventory is a high-level dagger, frequently enchanted. It's a reminder that while she prefers to let others do her dirty work, she's prepared to end a conversation permanently if necessary. The enchantment is usually paralyze or soul trap, cruel, efficient effects that mirror her personality perfectly. She doesn't just want to kill you, she wants to own you, even in death. There is a fascinating piece of obscure lore hidden in her pockets, or rather in the pockets of those connected to her, which reflects back on her wealth. If you pickpocket her son, Sybille Black-Briar, who is currently incarcerated in the Riften jail, you find the key to the Black-Briar meadery chest. This implies that, even while in prison, the family maintains tight control over their assets. However, Maven herself carries a letter or note in some versions of the game, or it can be found in her manor, linking her directly to the Dark Brotherhood. She has performed the Black Sacrament. This isn't just a rumour. She has a room in her house with a human heart and flesh, the ritual components. Her wealth includes a direct line to Sithis, a resource far more valuable than gold in a province torn apart by civil war. The community has long debated the extent of Maven's power, specifically regarding her relationship with the Thieves Guild. Some fans argue that she is the true guild master, using the organisation as her personal enforcement arm. When you restore the guild to its former glory, you're essentially just becoming a more efficient employee for Maven. The fact that she can walk around with impunity, carrying keys to half the city, supports this. She doesn't fear pickpockets because the pickpockets work for her. The Dragonborn, in this scenario, is the only rogue element, the only thief bold enough to steal from the boss. If you have the perfect touch perk and strip her of her fine clothes, you might notice something interesting about the game's design. Maven uses a specific face tint and texture that makes her look perpetually stern, almost tired. It's the face of a woman who hasn't slept peacefully in years, constantly manoeuvring to stay atop the shark tank. The clothes themselves are black and burgundy, colours of dried blood and shadows, distinct from the brighter finery of Solitude or Whiterun. They sell for a high price, but wearing them feels like wearing a target. One of the most satisfying things about robbing Maven isn't the monetary gain, it's the act of defiance. She constantly threatens the player. "I can have you killed," she says casually. "I have friends in high places." Taking her house key, her dagger, and her gold right from under her nose while she sits on the Jarl's throne, or the Jarl's right-hand chair, is the ultimate power move. It proves that for all her political manoeuvring and criminal connections, she is still vulnerable to the one thing she can't control. A protagonist with high stealth and no respect for authority. Before we leave the murky waters of Riften, there is one more detail to consider. Maven's inventory often resets or restocks if you stay away long enough, unlike many unique NPCs. This mechanical quirk makes her an infinite source of income, a renewable resource of corruption. It fits her character perfectly. No matter how much you take from Maven Black-Briar, she always makes it back. She is the Hydra of capitalism in Skyrim. We slip away from Mistveil Keep, leaving the matriarch lighter in coin but heavy in influence. The fog is thickening, rolling off Lake Honrish and obscuring the path. We aren't done with the Thieves Guild's sphere of influence just yet. In fact, we are heading deeper into it. Our next target is a man who would appreciate the skill it took to rob Maven, though he would never admit it. He is a man who turned betrayal into a business model, and his pockets hold the secrets of the Nightingale Trinity. We descend into the sewers, into the ratway. The air grows stale, smelling of rust and old blood. We are hunting the leader of the Thieves Guild himself, a man whose greed nearly destroyed the organisation he swore to protect. He carries a weapon that freezes blood and pockets full of gems that don't belong to him. Deep beneath the bustling streets of Riften, past the rat-infested tunnels and the vagrants who mutter into their empty bottles, lies the ragged flagon cistern. It is the secret heart of the Thieves Guild, a damp, echoing chamber filled with the sound of sharpening daggers, shuffling boots, and the quiet splash of water dripping from the ancient stonework. And standing at the head of the room, usually brooding over a map with the intensity of a man trying to solve a puzzle he created himself, is Mercer Frey. Mercer is a complicated target. Unlike Nazeem or Maven, who are merely wealthy civilians, Mercer is a master thief. He knows all the tricks because he invented half of them. Trying to pickpocket the guildmaster is a bit like trying to steal a wand from a wizard while he's holding it. The risk factor is astronomical. But for the completionist adventurer, checking Mercer's pockets is a look into the anatomy of a betrayal in progress. When you sneak up behind Mercer, assuming your sneak skill is high enough to bypass his perceptiveness, you aren't just looking at a standard NPC inventory. You're looking at the receipts of embezzlement. The first thing you'll notice is the gems. While most NPCs might carry a single garnet or amethyst, Mercer often carries high-quality precious stones, emeralds, diamonds, sapphires. These aren't just random loot generation. In the context of the story, these are likely skimming from the guild's coffers. He has been slowly bleeding the organisation dry for decades, and he carries the evidence right next to his hip. But the true prize, the item that links his pocket to his immense hidden wealth, is the key to Riftweald Manor. This key is the gateway to one of the most lucrative dungeons in the game. Mercer doesn't live in the sewers with the rest of the rats. He owns a lavish estate up on the surface, a fortress guarded by hired muscle and intricate traps. By lifting this key from his belt, you bypass the need to bribe his guard, Vald, or shoot the ramp mechanism. You simply walk into his front door like you own the place, and inside that manor, locked away in a display case that this key ultimately grants access to, is the legendary blade Chillrend. Chillrend is a core in-game fact that every Skyrim player covets. It is a glass sword, but not the standard malachite green. It glows with an icy blue hue, radiating a frost enchantment that can paralyze targets on contact. It is widely considered one of the best one-handed weapons in the game, and it belongs to Mercer. The fact that he keeps it locked up in his house while he carries a dwarven sword or a Daedric dagger implies he treats it more like a trophy than a tool. It is part of his hoard, a symbol of his status as a thief who takes the best for himself. Beyond the physical loot, Mercer Frey is the keeper of the skeleton key. While you cannot typically pickpocket this Daedric artifact from him during the early stages, he reveals it only at the end. Its presence in his possession explains his immense wealth of opportunity. The skeleton key doesn't just open doors. According to lore, it unlocks potential. It unlocks abstract barriers. This brings us to a fascinating fan theory regarding Mercer's competence. The Thieves' Guild has been suffering from bad luck for years, which they attribute to the displeasure of the Daedric Prince Nocturnal. Mercer, an ardent atheist regarding the Daedra, claims luck is a myth. Fans debate whether Mercer was actually using the skeleton key to unknowingly siphon the luck from the guild to himself. Was he essentially stealing the metaphysical concept of success from his subordinates? His ability to infiltrate the Snowvale Sanctum and stab the Dragonborn implies a level of supernatural advantage. He didn't just get rich on gold, he got rich on probability, hoarding all the good outcomes for himself while his guildmates rotted in jail. There is also an obscure lore tidbit found within his manor that further cements his status as a high-value target. Down in his basement, amidst the trapped corridors and secret rooms, you can find a bust of the Grey Fox. The Grey Fox is the legendary leader of the Thieves' Guild from Oblivion, the previous game, the man who stole an Elder Scroll and erased himself from history. The fact that Mercer possesses this bust suggests he is a collector of thief history. He isn't just a thug, he is a connoisseur of the craft. He studies the legends not to honour them, but to surpass them. It's a subtle environmental storytelling detail that shows his ego. He keeps the bust of the greatest thief in history in his basement, likely believing he is better. Picking Mercer's pocket in the cistern feels like a violation of the thief's code, which makes it all the more delicious. You're stealing from the man who broke the oath. The gold in his pocket is the retirement fund he plans to use once he flees Skyrim with the eyes of the farmer. When you take it, you're preemptively bankrupting his getaway plan. If you wait until the final confrontation in the flooded ruins of Erkungthand, Mercer becomes a loot piñata of a different sort. There, he is fully decked out in Guildmaster armour, some of the best light armour stats-wise, and he carries the eyes of the farmer, massive gems of incalculable value. But there is something more intimate about robbing him in the flagon. It's the domestic theft, the taking of his house key and his pocket change, that strips away the mystique of the villain and reveals him for what he is, a greedy man with too many secrets. Mercer's inventory is a testament to the idea that you can have everything. The best sword, the infinite key, the pile of diamonds, and still lose because you trusted no one. He's the richest man in the sewers, a king of garbage, guarding a fortune that he can never truly spend because he is always looking over his shoulder. As we leave the damp, claustrophobic atmosphere of the Ratway, climbing back up to the surface where the air is fresh, we leave Mercer to his paranoia. He will eventually meet his watery end, but we have other fortunes to assess. We are heading west now, across the Reach, to a city built of stone and blood. The landscape changes from the autumn gold of the Rift to the jagged, unforgiving crags of the Reach. The rivers here run fast and rocky, and the juniper trees cling to the cliffs for dear life. We are entering Markarth, the city of stone, a place where the architecture is Dwemer but the corruption is purely human. In Riften, crime is hidden in the sewers. In Markarth, it is brazenly displayed in the open. Our next target doesn't hide his wealth, he uses it as a bludgeon. He is part of a family that effectively owns the city, the guards, and the mines. If you thought Maven was intimidating, wait until you meet the man who enslaves the king in rags. We are visiting the Silverblood Inn, but we aren't checking in. We are checking the pockets of Thonar Silverblood. Markarth is a vertical nightmare of stone steps and Dwemer brass, a city carved directly into the mountain by a vanished race and now inhabited by Nords who seem intent on being as hard and cold as the rock itself. At the top of this hierarchy, looking down on the miners and the merchants, sit the Silverbloods, and the operational head of this brutal family is Thonar Silverblood. You can usually find Thonar in the main hall of the Silverblood Inn, arguing with his wife, Betrid, or managing the family's vast and ethically bankrupt portfolio from a table near the fire. The inn is loud, filled with the clinking of tankards and the rough laughter of mercenaries, but Thonar sits in a bubble of tense authority. He isn't a warrior like his brother Thongvor. Thonar is the businessman, the one who understands that gold is sharper than steel. Approaching Thonar for a little unauthorized withdrawal requires navigating the crowded common room. The guards here are notoriously corrupt, literally on the Silverblood payroll, so being caught picking Thonar's pocket is a quick way to end up in Sidna Mine, the very prison he profits from. But the risk is worth it, because Thonar is a walking bank vault. The most critical item in his inventory is the key to the treasury house. This is the core in-game fact that defines his power. The Treasury House isn't just a home, it's the financial hub of the Reach. It's where the land deeds, the mining contracts, and the significant fluid capital of the Silverblood family are stored. While you can break into the Treasury House through the front door, which is usually unlocked during the day, having the key allows you access to the private quarters and the locked chests in the back rooms without alerting the staff immediately. It's a master key to the city's economy. Inside Thonar's pockets, alongside a substantial amount of levelled gold, you will often find expensive jewellery. A gold diamond ring or a silver sapphire necklace is standard attire for him. These aren't just trinkets. In the lore of the Reach, silver is everything. It is the blood of the mountains. Wearing it is a statement of dominion over the land. By stealing his jewellery, you are stripping him of his badge of office. There is a fascinating piece of obscure lore tied to Thonar that is revealed through his inventory and his journal. If you pickpocket his journal, or read it after the inevitable tragedy that befalls his household, you discover that Thonar is personally managing the king in rags, Madanach. He isn't just a mine owner, he's a jailer who's essentially funding the forsworn rebellion to use as his private chaos agents. He keeps Madanach alive in Sidna Mine to control the forsworn attacks, directing them against his political rivals. This means the gold in his pocket is blood money in the most literal sense. It's profit generated from terrorism that he facilitates. This connection leads to a persistent community. Debate. Is Thonar a genius mastermind or a fool playing with fire? Fans often point out that his plan backfires spectacularly. His wife, Betrid, is eventually killed by the very agents he thought he controlled. His inventory, filled with wealth generated from this scheme, becomes a symbol of his hubris. He carries the keys to the mine and the treasury, thinking he owns the people inside them, but he is ultimately a victim of his own complexity. Some players argue that robbing him blind before the quest, the forsworn conspiracy kicks off, is the only justice he ever truly faces, as the game often leaves him alive and in power even after his schemes are exposed. One specific item often found on Thonar, or easily accessible with his keys, is the Silverblood family ring. While not a unique artifact with special stats in the vanilla game, in the narrative this ring represents the consolidation of power in Markarth. It's the signet that seals the deals condemning men to the mines for life. Swiping it feels like taking the corporate seal from a corrupt CEO. Thonar also carries the weight of his family's reputation. The Silverbloods are arguably more hated than the Black-Briars because their oppression is more physical. Maven threatens you, Thonar enslaves you. His pockets are lined with the profits of the Sidna Mine silver veins, dug out by prisoners who are slowly dying of rock joint and malnutrition. Every septim you lift from him feels like liberating a tiny piece of the Reach. If you have the pickpocket perk Misdirection, you can steal his weapon. Thonar usually carries a steel or dwarven mace. It's a blunt instrument, fitting for a man whose methods are far from subtle. Unlike the precise dagger of a Black-Briar, Thonar's weapon is designed to crush. Taking it leaves him defenseless when the Forsworn inevitably turn on him in the Treasury House lobby. It's a small, chaotic intervention that the Dragonborn can make to tilt the odds. The atmosphere in the Silverblood Inn is oppressive, thick with smoke and the smell of roasted meat. But stepping out into the cold stone streets of Markarth with Thonar's keys and gold in your satchel brings a breath of fresh air. You've just taxed the tyrant. You've redistributed the wealth of the mine owners back to the adventurer class. But Markarth is just one stop on our tour of Skyrim's elite. We need to head north now, to the capital, to the seat of the High King, or what's left of the court. We are going to Solitude, the city of towers, where the wealth is old, the manners are impeccable, and the corruption is draped in the finest silks. Solitude stands proudly on a natural arch of stone, defying gravity and common sense. It is the most cosmopolitan city in Skyrim, a place of bards, diplomats, and generals. The Blue Palace dominates the skyline, but the real money often flows through the hands of the nobility, who circle the court like vultures. Our next target is the embodiment of this sleazy diplomatic wealth. He is a Thane who treats politics like a marketplace, and his pockets are filled with the kind of loot that only diplomatic immunity can secure. We are looking for Thane Erikur. You know him. He's the one hitting on the serving girls in the Blue Palace, while simultaneously plotting to undercut his trading rivals. He is slimy, he is untouchable by the law, but he is very much touchable by our sticky fingers, Solitude is a city that prides itself on appearances. From the towering stone arch that supports the entire metropolis to the manicured courtyards of the Blue Palace, everything here is designed to project stability, power, and imperial grace. But as any seasoned adventurer knows, the shinier the apple, the more likely there is a worm inside. In the capital of Skyrim, that worm is named Thane Erikur. Erikur is a fixture of the Jarl's court, a man who spends his days lounging in the Blue Palace, whispering in corners and generally making everyone around him uncomfortable. He is the archetype of the corrupt politician, loud, boorish, and shielded by a thick layer of gold and titles. While Jarl Elisif the Fair worries about the legitimacy of her rule, and Falk Firebeard manages the actual logistics of the hold, Erikur is busy enriching himself. He is the perfect target for a high society heist, because robbing him feels less like a crime and more like a public service. When the Dragonborn glides across the polished marble floors of the Blue Palace, dodging the patrols of the Solitude guards, Erikur is usually found standing near the throne or sitting at the long banquet table helping himself to the Jarl's food. He wears a distinct set of noble clothes, a fur-lined ensemble that screams "I have more money than taste." These aren't just standard rags. In the game's economy, this specific outfit is one of the most valuable non-armor clothing items you can swipe. It's a tangible representation of his vanity. Reaching into Erikur's pockets reveals the standard heavy purse of a Solitude Thane, often ranging into the hundreds of septims. But the real story of his wealth lies in the items that connect him to the criminal underworld. Erikur isn't just a noble, he is an active participant in Skyrim's black market. The core in-game fact that exposes his true nature is his central role in the Thieves' Guild quest The Dainty Slode. Unlike other targets who are victims of the guild, Erikur is a client. He hires the guild to frame a ship captain, Volf, for possession of illicit drugs because of a petty business dispute. When you pickpocket him or loot his house, you are touching the assets of a man who traffics in Balmora Blue, a highly illegal and potent moon sugar derivative. His inventory and his home are essentially a front for a smuggling operation that operates under the nose of the Imperial Legion. He uses his diplomatic status to move goods that would get a commoner thrown in the dungeon. This connects to a piece of obscure lore regarding his family. Erikur has a sister named Gisli, who also wanders the Blue Palace. If you listen to her dialogue, she constantly complains about him, referring to him as a tyrant who controls her inheritance. But more interestingly, if you dig into the cut content and developer notes, there are indications that Erikur was intended to have an even darker role in Solitude's housing market, actively, evicting citizens to expand his portfolio. The key to Erikur's house, which sits in his pocket, opens a residence that is surprisingly close to the shops, filled with expensive silverware and potions. It's a bachelor pad funded by extortion. But perhaps the most lucrative aspect of Erikur's inventory is his access. During the main quest, Diplomatic Immunity, the Dragonborn must infiltrate the Thalmor embassy. Erikur is on the guest list. He is one of the few Nords welcomed into the high-security compound of the Aldmeri Dominion. This suggests a level of political wealth that is staggering. He is a collaborator, a man who sells his loyalty to the highest bidder. When you attend the party, you can actually use Erikur as a distraction. By exploiting his lecherous nature, he hits on a wood elf servant. You can trick him into causing a scene. The fan theory surrounding Erikur goes deeper than just simple corruption. Many players speculate that Erikur is the actual ruler of Solitude, in practice if not in title. Elisif is young, grieving, and inexperienced. Erikur bullies her in court scenes, pushing for decisions that favour the wealthy elite. The theory posits that the Empire tolerates him because he funds a significant portion of the war effort through his shady trade deals. He is the military-industrial complex of Solitude wrapped in a fur coat. When you steal his gold, you are effectively sanctioning the only entity in Solitude that the Empire is afraid to touch. Mechanically, Erikur is also a protected NPC, meaning he cannot be killed by standard means until certain quest conditions are met, or not at all, depending on the patch. This invincibility has bred a specific kind of player resentment. Since we can't kill him, we rob him. We steal his dagger, his gems, his house key, and yes, we strip him of his clothes right in the middle of the Blue Palace throne room. Leaving Erikur standing in his undergarments while he tries to lecture the Jarl on trade tariffs is one of the funniest emergent moments Skyrim has to offer. His inventory often contains high-value jewellery, reflecting his need to display his status. A gold emerald ring or a necklace of peerless haggling is common, These enchantments make sense. He is a deal maker. He doesn't fight his own battles. He pays people to fight them, or he sues them. As we slip the key to Erikur's house into our satchel, we leave the Thane to his machinations. He will continue to scheme, to harass the staff, and to sell out his countrymen for a slightly heavier purse, but for now his liquid assets belong to us. We have struck a blow against the white-collar crime of Skyrim, but while Erikur represents the corrupt consumers of luxury, we must now turn our attention to the suppliers. Just down the ramp from the Blue Palace, nestled among the high-end shops of Solitude, is a store that defines the fashion of the elite. It is run by two high elf sisters who judge you the moment you walk. In the door! They are the gatekeepers of style in the capital, and their inventory is a treasure trove of enchantment. We are heading to Radiant Raiment. If you've ever walked in there wearing iron armour and felt instantly underdressed, you know exactly who we are targeting next. Endori and Tari aren't just tailors. They are the premier enchanters merchants in the city, and their personal pockets are filled with the kind of magical fodder that breaks the game's economy. Stepping out of the Blue Palace and shaking off the oily residue of Thane Erikur's presence, we take a short walk down the paved ramp into the commercial heart of Solitude. The air here smells of lavender and sea salt, masked slightly by the perfume of the nobility who strut back and forth between the winking skeever and the marketplace. We are approaching a storefront that every Dragonborn knows well, usually because they were insulted the moment they crossed the threshold. Radiant Raiment is the premier fashion house of Skyrim, run by two high elf sisters, Endori and Tari. If you have ever walked in there wearing a full set of Daedric armour forged from the blood of gods and demons, only to be told you look like a hobo, you understand the vibe. These two are the ultimate gatekeepers of style, and while their attitudes are enough to make you save the game and draw your weapon, their pockets tell a story of incredible mercantile success. The sisters are a package deal when it comes to a heist. They are almost always together in the shop during the day, judging customers and folding expensive linens. Tari is the slightly more approachable one, the creative visionary, while Endari is the bulldog at the counter, managing the finances and the insults. Sneaking behind that counter, avoiding the gaze of the Solitude guard who sometimes wanders in to browse, is a delicate dance of line-of-sight manipulation. When you open their inventories, you aren't just finding the lunch money of a market vendor, you are tapping into the cash flow of the only dedicated luxury clothing store in the province. Their levelled gold is substantial, often reflecting the high margins on velvet and satin. But the real wealth here is situational. The key to Radiant Raiment found in their pockets is one of the most valuable keys for an enchanter. This is the core in-game fact that makes them targets. Radiant Raiment is the single best location in the entire game to farm for specific enchantments. Unlike blacksmiths who sell weapons, or general traders who sell a bit of everything, these sisters stock a massive inventory of enchanted necklaces, rings, and robes. If you are hunting for that elusive Fortify Alchemy, or Fortify Smithing enchantment to break the game's crafting loop, this shop is ground zero. Stealing their key allows you to break in at night, bypassing the lock to check the shelves and loose items, though the merchant chest itself remains hidden beneath the floor. But let's focus on their person. Tari in particular carries a unique burden of wealth. She is the only high elf marriage candidate in the base game. This is a bit of obscure lore that many players miss because they never get past her initial rudeness. If you complete her quest, Fit for a Jarl, where you model a specific outfit for Jarl Elisif to secure their business reputation, Tari's disposition flips. She becomes a potential spouse. This implies that the Dragonborn can legally marry into this business. By robbing her before this, you are technically robbing your future wife. Her inventory often contains the specific Radiant Raiment fine clothes needed for this quest, items that are unique to their brand and carry a high resale value. The community debate around these two is fierce and usually centres on who is the evil sister. Most players hate Endori, the elder sister, who is openly hostile. "You'd better buy something," she hisses. However, if you invest in her shop using the speech skill perks, her attitude changes dramatically. She becomes sycophantic, calling you a valued customer. This has led to the theory that they aren't actually mean, they are just aggressively capitalistic. They respect money. If you have it, you are a friend. If you don't, you are loitering. Their rudeness is a filter to keep the riffraff out of their boutique. There is also a prevalent fan theory that the sisters are essentially war profiteers. Solitude is the headquarters of the Imperial Legion, The city is filled with officers, diplomats, and wealthy refugees fleeing the Stormcloaks. Who clothes these people? Radiant Raiment. The war has been good for business. While the rest of Skyrim starves or freezes, Indari and Tari are selling gold-threaded tunics to the people directing the slaughter. Their pockets are heavy because Solitude is a bubble of denial, and they are the decorators of that bubble. Mechanically, picking their pockets can also yield a staggering amount of jewellery. Because they are merchants of finery, their personal inventories often spawn with diamond rings, silver necklaces, and circlets. It's not uncommon to pull a circlet of water breathing, or a necklace of disease immunity right out of Indari's dress, while she's busy insulting your boots. It's a pettier form of theft, but deeply satisfying. You're taking the very items they use to signal their superiority. If you have the perfect touch perk, stripping the sisters of their clothes reveals the standard high elf character model, but the context makes it hilarious. These are the women who critique everyone else's fashion sense, leaving them in their undergarments in their own showroom, surrounded by mannequins that are better dressed than they are, is a poetic irony that many thieves can't resist. One specific detail that adds to their value is the sheer volume of investment gold they can hold. If you unlock the Master Trader perk, Radiant Raiment becomes one of the richest shops in the game, capable of holding thousands of septims. While you can't pickpocket the shop's entire bank from their person, the gold they carry on them often reflects this high-tier merchant status. They are walking banks. Leaving Radiant Raiment, the bell above the door jingling softly as we step back into the street, we feel a little lighter in spirit and heavier in purse. We've humbled the fashion police of Solitude, but we aren't done with the Blue Palace's ecosystem just yet. We walk down to the shop, but now we must head back up past the guards, past the bards, and into the private quarters of the palace itself. There is a woman in the Blue Palace who has been there for a very, very long time. She isn't a merchant and she isn't a loudmouthed Thane. She is the court wizard, but she is also something much more dangerous. She has accumulated wealth not over decades but potentially over centuries. Her pockets hold the secrets of the undead, and her eyes have seen more history than the Empire itself. We are going to visit Sybille Stentor. You've seen her standing by the Jarl's side, pale and watchful. You've noticed she never sleeps. Tonight we're going to find out what a vampire keeps in her pockets when she thinks no one is brave enough to get close. Returning to the Blue Palace, the atmosphere shifts from the bustle of the court to a kind of sterile, suspended tension. Most of the Jarl's court is concerned with the immediate, the war, the trade tariffs, the gossip. But standing to the right of the throne, often with her arms crossed and a look of mild boredom on her face, is Sybille Stentor. She is the court wizard of Solitude, but to anyone with a keen eye or a detect life spell, she is a predator hiding in plain sight. Sybille is a vampire. This isn't just a fan theory. It is a confirmed fact that the game hints at heavily, but rarely screams aloud. Her eyes are a telltale reddish hue. She has access to high-level destruction and illusion spells, and she is noted by other NPCs as having served the Jarls of Solitude for a suspiciously long time. Mercer, the other mage in the palace, explicitly wonders why she hasn't aged a day in 20 years. Approaching Sybille for a pickpocket attempt is uniquely dangerous. Unlike Nazeem or Erikur, who are civilians, Sybille is a high-level mage capable of vaporizing the Dragonborn with a lightning bolt before the guards even draw their swords. Yet, her inventory is a treasure trove for the magically inclined thief. The first thing you'll notice when peering into her pockets is the sheer value of her jewellery. Sybille often carries high-tier enchanted rings and necklaces, items that boost magicka regeneration or reduce the cost of destruction spells. These aren't just fashion statements, they are the tools of her trade, the batteries that keep her lethal. Stealing a ring of destruction from a vampire mage is like stealing the magazine out of a soldier's rifle. You are disarming her. The core in-game fact that makes her inventory fascinating is the key to the Blue Palace guest quarters. While this seems standard for a court member, it grants access to her private room, which is a masterclass in environmental storytelling. Unlike the lavish, messy rooms of the other Thanes, Sybille's room is pristine, cold, and disturbing. If you use the key to sneak in, you won't find food. You won't find a bed that looks slept in. You might, however, find potions of blood or ingredients consistent with vampirism. The key is your pass to confirm her secret nature. But the most intriguing items she carries are often her soul gems. Sybille is one of the few merchants who reliably stocks black soul gems, the only gems capable of trapping human souls. Finding a filled black soul gem in her pocket is a chilling discovery. Whose soul is in there? A prisoner from the dungeon? A political rival? It implies that Sybille isn't just feeding on the populace, she is harvesting them for power. She's walking around the seat of Imperial power in Skyrim with the soul of a sentient being in her pocket, and nobody questions her. There is a piece of obscure lore connected to her that adds significant weight to her wealth. Sybille claims to have helped raise the late High King Torig. She has been a fixture in the palace for generations. This means her accumulated wealth isn't just from her salary as a wizard, it's compound interest over a human lifetime or more. She has survived purges, wars, and successions. Her inventory is the retirement fund of an immortal. She doesn't need to embezzle like Mercer Frey, she just needs to wait. The community debate around Sybille often centres on why the vigilance of Stentor or the Dawnguard haven't taken her out. Is she protected by the Jarl, or is she simply too useful? Some fans theorise that she uses illusion magic to mask her true nature from the devout, or that she has a specific arrangement with the Empire, her magical prowess in exchange for a don't ask, don't tell policy regarding her diet. The fact that she sends the Dragonborn to clear out a cave of feral vampires in the quest, Kill the Vampire, suggests she eliminates the competition to keep her own feeding ground secure. She's the apex predator protecting her territory. Stealing from Sybille is a test of nerve. She often sleeps during the day, a vampire trait, which makes her an easier target if you catch her in her quarters. However, her high perception means she wakes up easily. There is nothing quite like the adrenaline spike of failing a pickpocket attempt on a sleeping vampire, and having her wake up with eyes glowing and a spell charging in her hand. If you manage to strip her of her robes of destruction, or whichever high-level robe she has spawned with, you expose her further. Without the imposing silhouette of the wizard's robes, she looks smaller, frailer, a corpse kept animated by magic and blood. It deconstructs the monster. Sybille represents the old money of the supernatural world. She isn't a feral creature in a cave, she's a bureaucrat. She proves that the scariest monsters are the ones with job security and a pension. Picking her pocket is an act of rebellion against the hidden powers that truly rule Skyrim from the shadows. As we leave the Blue Palace, hopefully without a lightning bolt in our back, we have seen the wealth of the corrupt politicians, the snobbish merchants, and the undead advisors. But not all secretly rich NPCs are villains. Some are victims of circumstance, carrying fortunes they don't even know they have. We're travelling back to Riften now, but not for the Black-Briars or the Thieves' Guild. We're going to the market square. There is a dark elf merchant there, a man who sells miscellaneous junk and speaks with a gentle, humble voice. He thinks he's a nobody. He thinks he was an orphan abandoned in the swamps of Black Marsh. He is wrong. Our next target is Brand-Shei, and in his pocket, or rather, in the history that his inventory unlocks, lies the lost inheritance of a great house of Morrowind. We are about to uncover a tragedy hidden in a ledger. We return to the wooden walkways of Riften, but the vibe is different this time. We aren't skulking in the shadows of the Black-Briar Manor or wading through the muck of the Ratway. We are standing in the centre of the market square, where the leaves drift down from the golden trees and the canal water laps gently against the pylons. Here, surrounded by the scams and the shakedowns, stands a man who represents the absolute moral centre of a city that has none. He is a dark elf with a gentle voice and a humble stall selling goods from his homeland. This is Brand-Shei. Brand-Shei is a unique entry on our list because his wealth isn't something he flaunts, nor is it something he acquired through corruption. In fact, he doesn't even know he has it. He is a walking lottery ticket that has never been scratched. To the casual observer, and indeed to himself, he is an orphan who was raised by Argonians in Black Marsh, making a modest living selling Morrowind imports. But to the lore-savvy thief who rifles through his pockets and his past, Brand-Shei is the lost scion of one of the most powerful and wealthy dynasties in Tamrielic history. When the Dragonborn approaches Brand-Shei, usually during the daylight hours, the interaction is often tainted by the Thieves' Guild initiation quest, a chance arrangement. We are explicitly told to plant a stolen ring in his pocket to frame him. It's a dirty job, the kind that makes you feel like a scumbag even if you're playing a villain character. But if we pause, ignore Brynjolf's pressure, and actually look at what Brand-Shei is carrying, the tragedy of the situation unfolds. In his inventory, you will find the standard merchant gold, often a decent sum if you have the perks, as he is a general goods trader. You will also find the key to Brand-Shei's strongbox. This key unlocks the small chest under his stall, which usually contains a few potions, some gold, and perhaps a dagger. It's modest. It's the inventory of a working-class immigrant trying to survive in a city that hates his kind. However, the core in-game fact that transforms Brand-Shei from a pauper to a prince is the quest Distant Memories. If you speak to him about his origins, he reveals he was found as an infant wrapped in blankets bearing the symbol of House Telvanni. This kicks off a scavenger hunt that leads the Dragonborn to the wreck of the Pride of Telvos, a ship that crashed on the coast of Winterhold during the Red Year. Inside that wreck, inside a waterlogged chest, is a journal written by Limdren Telvanni. This is the obscure lore that pays off the secretly rich premise. The journal reveals that Brand-Shei's true name is Brandil Telvanni, the son of a Telvanni master. For those unfamiliar with Morrowind politics, House Telvanni is the house of wizard lords. They are eccentric, isolationist, and astronomically wealthy. They live in giant mushroom towers, own treasures that date back to the First Era, and treat the laws of physics as mere suggestions. To be a Telvanni heir is to be born into the closest thing Tamriel has to godhood. Brand-Shei is unknowingly carrying the bloodline of this aristocracy. While he haggles over the price of a flagon of Sujamma in a dirty market in Skyrim, he's rightfully the inheritor of a legacy that includes magical artifacts, research vaults, and likely a significant amount of gold buried in the ash of Vardenfell. The wealth he carries is intangible but immense. It is the potential of what he should have been. He isn't just a merchant. He is a displaced nobleman living in exile without even knowing the extent of his own fall. This creates a sharp, painful contrast when you look at the fan theory and community debate surrounding his fate. The vast majority of players consider the canon outcome for Brand-Shei to be the one where the Dragonborn fails or refuses the initial frame-up job. Why? Because if you succeed in planting Madessi's ring in his pocket, the guards arrest Brand-Shei. He's dragged away from his stall, stripped of his inventory, and thrown into the Riften jail. And due to a bug, or perhaps a cruel feature in the game's scripting, he often never leaves. Players have documented Brand-Shei sitting in a cell for hundreds of in-game days, rotting away while his stall stands empty. The rich heir ends his days in a dungeon, his heritage discovered only by a thief who ruined his life. It is widely considered one of the most unjust outcomes in the game. The community debate often centres on whether it is worth joining the Thieves Guild if it means destroying the life of the only decent guy in Riften. Many players use mods specifically to free him, or use console commands to reset his AI, just to see him back at his stall. If you spare him, however, and complete his personal quest, you hand him the journal. You give him his name, you give him his history. He doesn't suddenly become a wizard lord, he remains a humble merchant, but the wealth of knowing who he is added to his character. He places the book on his shelf, metaphorically, a possession far more valuable than the random junk he sells. From a loot perspective, Brand-Shei is also a source of Dunmer cultural wealth. His shop inventory often includes items like Telvanni robes, rare in Skyrim, bone mold armour, and distinct beverages like Shine or Flynn. He is a conduit for the exotic, a small window into the economy of Morrowind. Pickpocketing the key to his strongbox allows you to refresh your supply of these items without paying the import taxes. There is a subtle irony in robbing Brand-Shei. When you take his gold, you're taking the earnings of a man who works harder than anyone else in the market, a man who survived the apocalypse of his homeland only to end up in a city run by the Mafia. Unlike robbing Nazeem, which is funny, or Maven, which is justice, robbing Brand-Shei feels like kicking a puppy. It highlights the immoral nature of the pickpocket skill tree. The game doesn't care if the target deserves it. The game only cares if the percentage is high enough. The true treasure of Brand-Shei isn't in his pocket, it is his pocket. It's the fact that this nondescript merchant contains a story that spans provinces and eras. He is the remnant of the Pride of Telvos. He is the last echo of a Telvanni master's hope for his son. And he stands there, day after day, politely asking if you'd like to buy some ash yam. As we leave the Riften market, perhaps feeling a pang of guilt, or perhaps not if we are role-playing a heartless rogue, we leave Brand-Shei to his modest life. He may be a secret millionaire by blood, but in practice, he is just another survivor. We must now leave the civilian sector entirely. We have robbed merchants, nobles, and wizards. It is time to turn our eyes toward the military. The civil war is raging across Skyrim, consuming resources and lives in equal measure, and at the head of the Imperial war machine stands a man who carries the weight of the Emperor's will. We are travelling to Solitude once more, but we are bypassing the shops and the palace. We are heading to Castle Dour. We are going to inspect the inventory of the man tasked with crushing the Stormcloak Rebellion. He is a career soldier, a pragmatist, and he is carrying the keys to the Empire's logistical heart. General Tullius is waiting. He's usually staring at a tactical map, complaining about the Nords. Let's see what a general carries when he thinks he's safe behind stone walls and Legion steel. Leaving the open-air market of Riften behind, we fast travel back to the northwest, returning to the imposing stone arch of Solitude. But this time, we're ignoring the velvet cushions of the Blue Palace and the overpriced tunics of radiant raiment. We're marching straight to the grim, fortified heart of the Imperial occupation in Skyrim, Castle Dour. The atmosphere inside Castle Dour is a stark contrast to the rest of the game. It doesn't smell of mead or magic. It smells of whetstone, polished steel, and stress. The war room is the nerve centre of the Legion, a place where maps are pushed back and forth across a table, and where the fate of the province is decided in hushed, frustrated tones. And standing at the head of that table, looking like he hasn't slept since the Third Era, is General Tullius. Tullius is the military governor of Skyrim, the man tasked by the Emperor to crush the Stormcloak Rebellion. He is pragmatic, disciplined, and utterly exhausted by Nordic culture. He views the entire province as a logistical nightmare, and if you look at his inventory, you can see that he is prepared to buy his way out of it if fighting doesn't work. Sneaking up on Tullius is a challenge not because of his own perception. He's usually too busy staring at the map markers, but because of his shadow, Legate Rika. She stands directly across from him, eyes scanning the room. To pickpocket the general, you have to be a ghost. You have to slide into the blind spot of two of the most observant NPCs in the game. But if you manage to get close enough to see the contents of his pockets, you're looking at the Imperial war chest in miniature. The first thing that grabs your attention is the sheer amount of gold. General Tullius carries a levelled amount of coin that often rivals the wealthiest merchants. This isn't pocket change for sweetrolls, this is the Legion's operational fund. In a role-playing sense, stealing this gold is akin to cutting the supply line. You're swiping the soldiers' pay, the bribe money for the Jarls, and the funds for the next shipment of arrows. It is a heavy purse, weighed down by the bureaucracy of the Empire, but the gold is secondary to the equipment. Tullius is a unique NPC in that his apparel is a one-of-a-kind asset. He wears the general's armour, sometimes referred to in the community as the Tullius Gold. Unlike the standard Imperial heavy armour, which is made of steel and leather, Tullius's cuirass is detailed with intricate golden inlay and superior craftsmanship. This brings us to the core in-game fact regarding his loot table. You cannot obtain this armour through crafting. You cannot buy it at a shop. For the vast majority of the game, the only way to get this set is to kill Tullius at the end of the Stormcloak questline. However, for the Master Thief with the perfect touch perk, Tullius becomes a walking display case. You can strip the general of his golden armour right in the middle of the war room. There is a profound, almost slapstick absurdity in leaving the commander of the Imperial Legion standing in his undergarments, while he continues to discuss grand strategy with Rika. It completely undermines the gravity of the civil war. His weapon is another point of interest. Tullius usually carries a high-level sword, often glass or ebony depending on the player's level, or a unique Imperial sword. It's a weapon that has likely never been swung in anger since he arrived in Skyrim, kept pristine and sharp, a symbol of authority rather than a tool of war. Stealing it leaves him pointing an empty fist at the map when he gets angry, which happens frequently. There is a piece of obscure lore hidden in the game files and interactions surrounding Tullius that adds depth to his inventory. If you dig into the creation kit, you'll find that Tullius was originally intended to have more direct interaction with the Thalmor, specifically Elenwen. There are cutscenes and dialogue suggesting a much more volatile relationship where he essentially tells the Thalmor to back off. His inventory, specifically the keys he carries, often includes the key to Castle Dour dungeon. This key grants access to the prisoner cells, but more importantly, it offers a back door to the Emperor's Tower later in the game. It represents his role as the jailer of the province. He holds the keys to the cages where the Empire puts its problems. This connects to a massive community debate that recontextualizes the wealth on his person. The Great War II theory posits that Tullius is hoarding resources and trying to end the civil war quickly, not just to serve the Emperor, but because he knows a second war with the Aldmeri Dominion is imminent. Fans argue that his frustration with the Nords isn't just cultural elitism, it's panic. He knows that every soldier lost fighting Ulfric is one less soldier available to fight the elves. When you look at his inventory, purely functional high-value military assets, no personal mementos, no letters to home, it supports the idea of a man who has stripped his life down to the mission. He's a weapon of the Empire. He carries nothing that doesn't help him win. Contrasting him with Ulfric's Stormcloak is vital here. Ulfric carries personal items, jewellery, things that tie him to his heritage. Tullius carries the state. He's a vessel for the Empire's wealth and power. When you rob him, you aren't robbing a man, you're robbing an institution. There is also a mechanical quirk that makes Tullius a secretly rich target for the exploitative player. Because he is an essential NPC for half the game, his inventory can reset in strange ways if the cell reloads, or if certain quest stages trigger. He is a renewable source of high-tier swords and gold if you're patient enough to farm the General of the Legion. It's a risky grind, considering the number of guards, but for a thief who wants to bleed the Empire dry, it's a patriotic duty. If you do manage to steal his armour, the game engine sometimes struggles to figure out what to do with him. He may respawn a standard set of Imperial armour, or he may remain in his civilian clothes, or lack thereof, for the duration of the war. Seeing a half-naked general accepting the surrender of a Stormcloak commander is one of those immersion-breaking moments that somehow makes the game better. It reminds you that underneath the titles, the armour and the history, every NPC is just a paper doll waiting to be undressed by a level 100 pickpocket. Tullius also carries the weight of the missable loot. If you side with the Empire, you never get to kill him, and thus, you never get his armour legitimately. This makes the pickpocket route the only way for a loyal Imperial soldier to obtain the uniform of their commander. It's a strange paradox. To look like the ultimate Imperial patriot, you have to commit treason against your general. As we slip out of the war room, leaving Tullius lighter in coin and perhaps feeling a sudden draft, we exit Castle Dower and step back into the courtyard. We have looted the military-industrial complex. We have touched the gold that pays for the occupation, but there is one person in the Empire who ranks higher than General Tullius. There is one man whose pockets are not just lined with gold, but with the destiny of the entire continent. He is rarely seen in Skyrim. In fact, he only arrives for a very specific, very fatal reason. We are heading to the docks of Solitude. A massive ship has just pulled into the harbour. It is the Katariah, and on board is the Emperor himself, Titus Mede II. We are going to do the unthinkable. We aren't just going to assassinate him, we are going to rob him first, because if you're going to kill an Emperor, you might as well take his wallet and his robes as a souvenir. The salty air of the Solitude docks feels different than the stagnant dampness of Riften. Here, the wind carries the chill of the Sea of Ghosts, biting through leather armour and freezing the moisture in your breath. We have descended from the stone heights of Castle Dower, leaving a confused and possibly naked General Tullius in his war room to face the ultimate authority in Tamriel. Anchored just offshore, looming out of the mist like a wooden leviathan, is the Katariah. This isn't just a ship, it is a floating fortress, the personal flagship of Titus Mede II, Emperor of Cyrodiil. Getting on board is not a matter of simply walking up a gangplank. You usually need to be a high-ranking member of the Dark Brotherhood, tasked with the most high-profile assassination contract since the end of the Oblivion Crisis. But before we slip the blade between the Emperor's ribs, we have a job to do. We are thieves first, assassins second, and the Emperor is carrying the ultimate souvenir. Navigating the interior of the Katariah is a stealth mission in itself. The ship is crawling with Penitus Oculatus agents, the Emperor's personal secret service, who are far more competent than the standard city guards. They don't accept bribes, and they don't yield. But once you bypass them, slipping through the narrow corridors and climbing the stairs to the Emperor's quarter, you find yourself in a room that smells of lavender and resignation. Titus Mede II sits at his desk or stands by the window, looking out at the skyline of a province that hates him. He is an old man, weary and surprisingly calm. He knows why you are there, but he doesn't know that before you send him to the void, you're going to check his pockets. The Emperor's inventory is small, but it contains the single most prestigious piece of clothing in the game, the Emperor's robes. This is the core in-game fact that drives the collection instinct of every Skyrim hoarder. These robes are unique. While there is a set found on the Decoy Emperor earlier in the Dark Brotherhood questline, the set on Titus Mead Neo is the genuine article. They are visually distinct, rich with crimson fabric and gold embroidery, weighing almost nothing but carrying a value that is astronomically high for a clothing item. When you steal these robes, you aren't just taking a shirt, you are taking the regalia of the Ruby Throne. Alongside the robes, the Emperor often wears a pair of gilded wrist guards. These are also unique to him and his double. They are simple, elegant, and utterly unobtainable anywhere else. The gold in his pocket is usually substantial, a levelled amount appropriate for a monarch, but honestly, who cares about the septims when you can own the outfit? The act of pickpocketing the Emperor is the ultimate power play. He is waiting for death, trying to negotiate a dignified end, asking you to listen to his final request. Meanwhile, the Dragonborn is crouching behind his chair, looking at the probability meter. Stripping the Emperor naked in his final moments adds a layer of dark, chaotic humour to a scene that is written to be solemn. It transforms a political tragedy into a farce. There he stands, delivering his final monologue about the burden of the crown, while wearing nothing but his undergarments because a cat person decided his robes would look good on a mannequin in Breezeholm. There is a fascinating piece of obscure lore tied to the ship itself. The Katariah is named after Katariah Septim, the only Dark Elf to ever rule the Empire. She was the wife of Pelagius the Mad and took the throne after his death, ruling during the early Third Era. By naming his flagship after a Dunmer Empress, Titus Mead II, or the shipbuilders, are invoking a history of a more cosmopolitan, inclusive empire. It's a subtle nod to the idea that the Empire is a tapestry of races, a direct ideological counter to the Skyrim belongs to the Nords rhetoric of the Stormcloaks. The ship is a floating symbol of Imperial unity, even as it sits in the harbour of a rebellious province. The community debate surrounding Titus Mead II is one of the most intense in the lore community. It centres on the suicide by assassin theory. Many players believe that the Emperor actually put the contract out on himself. They point to his calmness, his lack of surprise, and his specific request for you to kill the man who hired you, Amand Motiero. The theory argues that Titus Mead knows he is unpopular and that his death would martyr him, potentially uniting the Empire against the Thalmor or simply clearing the board for a successor who isn't tainted by the white gold concordat. If this theory is true, then his inventory takes on a new meaning. He isn't carrying weapons, he isn't wearing armour, he is dressed in soft robes, carrying only the symbols of his office. He has dressed himself for the sacrifice. When you rob him, you're disrupting the stagecraft of his martyrdom. You're turning a noble sacrifice into a mugging, but the wealth of the Katariah isn't limited to the Emperor's person. If you explore the ship thoroughly, you find the Emperor's quarters key which he carries. This key opens the chests and safes in his room, which are filled with gems, gold bars, and high-level potions. It is a concentrated loot drop, likely the travel funds for the royal retinue. However, the real secret wealth of this encounter is found outside the cabin. If you walk out onto the deck and climb to the very tip of the bowsprit, the long pole extending from the front of the ship, you will find a sword embedded in the wood. This is Windshear. Windshear is arguably the most broken, overpowered weapon in Skyrim. It is a unique scimitar that possesses a stagger enchantment which isn't fully described in the item text. It has a 100% chance to stagger opponents with every hit. A player wielding Windshear can essentially lock any enemy, from a mudcrab to a dragon, in a permanent state of stumbling. It is the I win button of melee combat. While it isn't in the Emperor's pocket, it is part of his ship's inventory. It is his figurehead. The fact that the Emperor travels with a weapon that guarantees victory, yet chooses not to use it, further supports the theory that he wants to die. He has the ultimate defense stuck in the front of his boat, and he ignores it. Stealing the robes, the wrist guards, and the Windshear sword constitutes one of the biggest net worth heists in the game. You're stripping the Empire of its dignity and its best weapon in a single night. As you stand on the deck of the Katariah, the Emperor lying dead in his cabin, dressed or undressed depending on your cruelty, you look out over the misty water. You have touched the highest level of political power in Tamriel and found it to be just as lootable as a bandit chief. The clothes of a king are just cloth, and they sell for gold just like everything else. But our appetite for unique loot and secret riches is not yet sated. We have conquered the mainland of Skyrim. We have robbed the capitals, the mines, and the ships. To find the next level of wealth that is ancient, magical, and incredibly arrogant, we must leave Skyrim entirely. We need to catch a boat. Not the Katariah, but a smaller vessel, one that will take us east, across the sea, to the ash-choked island of Solstheim. We are heading to the Dragonborn DLC territory. We are going to the land of giant mushrooms and netch jelly. Our next target lives in a tower grown from fungus. He is a Telvanni wizard lord who views everyone else as an insignificant insect. He has thousands of years of magical hoarding behind him, and his pockets are filled with items that defy explanation. Prepare yourself for Master Neloth. He is arguably the rudest NPC in the entire franchise, and he is absolutely loaded. We are going to tell Mithrin to see if we can pickpocket a wizard without getting turned into a pile of green goo. The boat ride from the frozen docks of Windhelm to the ash-choked harbour of Ravenrock is a journey between worlds. We leave behind the snow and the pines of Skyrim and step onto a landscape that looks like the surface of a bruised moon. Solstheim is a harsh alien rock covered in the grey fallout of Red Mountain. The air tastes of sulphur and burnt earth, and the music shifts from the heroic swelling of the mainland to a lonely, windswept drone. But we aren't here for the depression. We're here for the eccentricity. We're heading to the southeast coast where the vegetation gets strange and the architecture becomes alive. Rising from the ash wastes like a giant fungal sentinel is Tel Mithrin. For those who haven't played Morrowind, this is a shock to the system. It is a tower grown from a massive Emperor parasol mushroom, hollowed out and enchanted to serve as a dwelling for a wizard of House Telvanni. And living inside this organic skyscraper is Master Neloth. Neloth is not just rich, he is Telvanni rich. This is a distinction that matters. To a Telvanni wizard lord, gold is a mundane utility, something you use to buy eggs or hire mercenaries to die for you. True wealth is magical power, longevity, and a collection of artifacts that would make a museum curator weep. Neloth possesses all of these in spades. He is arguably the most arrogant character in the entire Elder Scrolls franchise, treating the Dragonborn, the Slayer of Alduin, the saviour of the world, like a slightly dim-witted lab assistant. When you float up the magical elevator in the centre of the tower, a nausea-inducing experience for the uninitiated, and find Neloth pacing around his enchanting table, you are standing next to a being who is centuries old. He remembers things that are now considered ancient history. Peering into Neloth's pockets is like looking into the inventory of a high-level player character. The first thing you notice is the gold. Neloth is a master trainer in enchanting. Mechanically, this means if you pay him to train you, that gold, thousands upon thousands of septims, goes directly into his personal inventory. If you are quick enough, you can pay him for a lesson, slide behind him while he is still pontificating about your lack of skill, and pickpocket the tuition fee right back. It is the ultimate student loan forgiveness program. He becomes a renewable bank of high-value currency, often carrying far more gold than any merchant in the game could ever hope to stock. But the gold is boring compared to his apparel. Neloth wears the Telvanni robes. These are unique in Skyrim, unless you count the unworn set found elsewhere. They are a callback to the complex insect shell aesthetic of the Dark Elves' native armour. They are woven with enchantments that boost magicka regeneration, essential for a wizard who casts spells that could level a small village. Stealing these robes is a feat, not just because of the difficulty check, but because of the sheer audacity of stripping a Telvanni master in his own tower. The core in-game fact that anchors his wealth is his monopoly on the staff enchanter. In a locked room adjacent to the main chamber, accessible only if you have the key or complete his quests, lies the only crafting station in the game that allows you to create your own magical staves. Neloth owns the technology. In a world where magic is a commodity, he holds the patent on the manufacturing process. He also sells unique spells found nowhere else, like the ability to conjure Ash Guardians. His store isn't a counter, it's his knowledge, and he charges a premium for it. There is a wonderful piece of obscure lore that connects Neloth to the previous game, The Elder Scrolls III, Morrowind. Neloth was a quest giver in that game as well, residing in the Tower of Tel Naga in Sadrith Mora. Back then he was already old and already cranky. He owned a legendary item called the Robe of the Drake's Pride, a powerful artifact that players were often tasked with stealing. The fact that he is still alive, still rich, and still complaining about his tea temperature 200 years later after the Red Year destroyed his homeland and the Argonians invaded Morrowind, proves that he is the ultimate survivor. His wealth is his continuity. He outlived the Septim dynasty. He outlived the tribunal gods. He is walking history. This longevity fuels a popular community debate. Is Neloth actually more powerful than the main antagonist of the DLC, Miraak? Fans often point out that Neloth seems entirely unbothered by Miraak's return. While the rest of the island is being mind-controlled by the first Dragonborn, Neloth is just annoyed that it's interfering with his research. Some theorise that Neloth could easily crush Miraak if he cared enough to do so, but because Miraak's plans don't directly threaten his mushroom tower or his tea supply, he simply can't be bothered to intervene. He views the apocalypse as a distraction. The Dragonborn is merely the hired help sent to deal with the noise complaint. Neloth's inventory often contains heartstones. These are unique magical minerals found only on Solstheim, born from the ash of Red Mountain. Neloth is obsessed with them, researching ways to replace hearts with these stones to grant immortality or greater power, as seen with his apprentice Ildari. Carrying these stones signifies his cutting-edge research. He is on the frontier of magical science, operating with zero ethical oversight. Stealing from Neloth has a different flavour than stealing from the Nords. When you rob a Nord, they get angry and draw an axe. When you rob Neloth, if you get caught, his dialogue drips with condescension. He doesn't even seem mad. He seems disappointed that you are so incompetent. Do you mind? He might sneer, as if you were a mosquito buzzing around his head. However, if you succeed in stripping him of his Staff of Paralysis, or whatever high-level staff he has spawned with, and his robes, you reveal the frailty beneath the power. He is an old, grey-skinned elf, kept alive by magic and spite. Without his robes, he looks like a dried twig. It's a reminder that for all his bluster and all his arcane might, he is physically vulnerable. The pickpocket skill is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you can summon a Daedric Lord. If someone steals your pants, you still look foolish. The environment of Tel Mithryn adds to the heist. You're surrounded by his floating spores, his bubbling alchemy labs, and his terrified apprentices, Talvas and the steward Verona, or her replacement. Robbing him feels like stealing from a dragon in its lair, if the dragon was a grumpy grandfather who lived in a fungus. There is also the matter of the black books. While Neloth doesn't carry a black book in his pocket, he guards one in his tower. He's a hoarder of forbidden knowledge. The black books are windows into the realm of Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric Prince of Knowledge. Neloth treats these eldritch horrors like library books he's overdue on returning. His wealth includes a library card to the Dimension of Madness. Leaving Tel Mithryn is always a relief. The constant humming of the Mushroom Tower and the spore clouds can be headache-inducing. We take the elevator down, float gently to the floor, and step back out into the grey ash of Solstheim. We have pilfered the pockets of a wizard who has forgotten more about magic than we will ever know. We have taken his gold, his staff, and his dignity, but we are done with the island of Ash. We need to return to the mainland. We have one more class of people to investigate. We have done the merchants, the politicians, the soldiers, and the wizards. Now we must turn to the shadows. We are going to look at the killers. You might think that an assassin lives a life of austerity hiding in the dark. But in the Dark Brotherhood, murder is a business, and business is good. There is a member of the Brotherhood who is much older than she looks, and she has been collecting fees for contracts since before the current empire was even formed. We're heading to the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary, whichever one you haven't burned down yet. We are looking for the child who is not a child. We are looking for Babette. She sells poisons that can stop a heart in seconds, and she keeps the profits in a very small, frilly pocket. We leave the ash and mushrooms of Solstheim behind, taking the boat back to Windhelm and then journeying south, deep into the dense, foggy pine forests of Falkreath. We are looking for a door that asks a question. What is the music of life? If you know the answer, silence, my brother. The black stone melts away, revealing the damp, mossy interior of the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary. The sanctuary is a place of outcasts. It smells of dried herbs, metallic blood, and the wet fur of a werewolf. But in the main chamber, sitting casually at a stone table, is perhaps the most terrifying entity in the entire guild. She isn't the giant orc, nor the Argonian who speaks in whispers. She's a 10-year-old girl in a red dress. This is Babette. To the uninitiated, Babette looks like a victim, a child lost in a den of monsters. But check her eyes. They are the same reddish hue as Sybille Stentor's. Babette is a vampire, and she is over 300 years old. She has been killing people since the Second Era, long before the Septim Empire collapsed, long before the Great War. She is a predator trapped in the body of a cherub, and if we are brave enough to sneak up behind her while she's mixing poisons, we find that she is also incredibly, staggeringly rich. Babette's inventory is a unique case study in trainer wealth. She is the master trainer for alchemy in Skyrim. Mechanics-wise, this means she can teach the Dragonborn up to level 90 in the craft. As any player knows, high-level training costs a fortune, thousands upon thousands of septims per session. When you pay her for these lessons, the gold goes directly into her personal merchant inventory. If the Dragonborn invests in training and then immediately pickpockets the gold back, they are looking at a purse containing anywhere from 20 to 30,000 septims. She is walking around with the price of a Solitude manor in the pocket of a child's frock. But even without the training exploit, Babette's pockets are a goldmine for the aspiring poisoner. She serves as a merchant for the Brotherhood, selling high-end ingredients. You won't find common mountain flowers or wheat on her. You will find Daedra hearts, void salts, frost salts, and giant's toes. These are the most expensive alchemical components in the game. A single Daedra heart is worth a small fortune. Stealing her supply stock is effectively stealing the raw materials for game-breaking potions. The core in-game fact that defines her status is her survival. When the Dark Brotherhood sanctuary is raided by the Penitus Oculatus in the quest Death Incarnate, almost everyone dies. Astrid the leader burns. Festus Crex is pinned to a tree with arrows. Gabriella and Vizara are slaughtered. But Babette, she survives. She and Nazir are the only ones to make it out, along with the Dragonborn and the Night Mother. This implies that Babette is not just lucky, she is the most competent survivor in the group. She carries the institutional knowledge of the Brotherhood. She is the backup drive. Her wealth isn't just gold, it's the fact that she is the only one smart enough to know when to run. There is a chilling piece of obscure lore found in her dialogue that explains how she acquires her personal fortune. She tells a story about a contract she fulfilled. She mentions a man who had a weakness for children. She stood on the road, looking lost and crying. When the man stopped to help her, offering her candy and a ride in his carriage, she waited until he was close, then ripped out his throat. She laughs about it. "I got a free meal and a bag of candy," she says. It's a moment that freezes the blood. It reminds you that her wealth comes from exploiting the darkest, most predatory instincts of humanity. She uses her innocence as the ultimate camouflage. This leads to a fascinating community debate regarding her classification. In the game code, Babette is flagged as a child race. This makes her unkillable. You cannot swing a sword at her. It passes right through. You cannot execute her. Yet, she is a vampire, a monster by definition. Fans often debate the morality of this immortality. Is she unkillable because the game developers didn't want players killing children, a standard censorship rule? Or is she unkillable because she is actually that powerful? Lore-wise, she's older and stronger than almost any human in the room. Some theories suggest that if the Dragonborn turned on the Sanctuary, Babette would be the actual final boss, a tiny, fast, magical blur that you simply couldn't hit. Mechanically, robbing Babette has a strange limitation. You cannot steal her clothes. The child race doesn't have a nude body mesh or an underwear mesh in the vanilla game, so the developers locked her apparel slots to prevent game-breaking visual bugs, or just horrors. You can take her gold, her dagger and her spider eggs, but the red dress stays on. It's a rare instance where the game engine protects a target's dignity, purely out of technical necessity. Her inventory also reflects her no-overhead lifestyle. Think about it. Babette doesn't age. She doesn't grow out of her clothes. She doesn't need to buy food. She drinks blood, which is free if you're not picky. She doesn't pay rent. She lives in a secret cave. So where does her money go? She has been collecting contract fees for 3 centuries with zero cost of living. That gold we find in her pocket is just the petty cash she keeps on hand. Somewhere, buried under a rock or hidden in a coffin, Babette likely has a hoard that rivals a dragon's. She's the ultimate saver. There is also a subtle detail involving the spider, Lise. Babette often feeds the giant frostbite spider that lives in the sanctuary entrance. In her inventory or the chests near her, you often find human flesh or other grim tidbits. It's a reminder that she is part of an ecosystem of monsters. She isn't a prisoner here, she is the pet owner. Picking Babette's pocket is a strange experience. The steal prompt appears over a character that looks like she should be playing tag in Whiterun. It feels wrong, even for a thief. But then she opens her mouth and makes a crack about how long it takes a target to bleed out, and the guilt vanishes. You're robbing a 300-year-old serial killer. She can afford to lose a few emeralds. Her survival at the end of the Brotherhood questline means she moves to the Dawnstar Sanctuary. If you follow her there, her inventory restocks. She continues to sell lethal poisons and train the Dragonborn, effectively resetting her loot table for another round of theft. She's a constant in a world of variables, a permanent fixture of death and commerce. As we slip away from the table, leaving Babette to count her remaining coins, or lack thereof, we exit the heavy atmosphere of the sanctuary. We have robbed the child of the Brotherhood. We have taken the blood money of 3 centuries. But we aren't done with the scholarly or the obsessive types just yet. We need to head back west to the City of Stone where we robbed Thonar Silverblood. But this time, we aren't going to the inn. We're going to the keep, to the excavation site carved right into the mountain. There is a wizard there who is so obsessed with the Dwemer, the deep elves, that he barely notices the world around him. He runs a museum that's really just a front for his hoarding. He is the foremost archaeologist in Skyrim, and his pockets are filled with the keys to the past. We are going to visit Calcelmo. You know him. He's the one who sends you a courier every time you buy a dwarven arrow. He wants everything for his museum, but tonight we are going to see what he's keeping for himself. Leaving the pine forests of Falkreath and the blood-stained sanctuary of the Dark Brotherhood, we journey back west, returning to the City of Stone. Markarth seems to be a recurring hub for hidden wealth, which makes sense. The entire city is built on the ruins of a civilization that knew how to hoard. But where Thonar Silverblood represents the brutal, enslaved extraction of wealth, our next target represents the intellectual hoarding of it. We are bypassing the inn and the silver mines, heading straight up the massive stone steps to the very top of the city, into the imposing maw of Understone Keep. The keep is a cavernous subterranean palace that hums with the geothermal energy of the Dwemer machines below. It smells of sulphur, ancient dust, and the burning oil of 1,000 torches. And in the left wing of this massive structure, usually hunched over an alchemy table or staring intently at a piece of scrap metal, is Calcelmo. Calcelmo is the court wizard of Markarth, but that title feels like a formality. In reality, he is the foremost archaeologist in Skyrim, a man so obsessed with the Dwemer, the deep elves, that he has essentially become a hermit in his own excavation site. To the player, Calcelmo is often a source of annoyance or amusement, but to the thief, he is the gatekeeper to a fortune in artifacts. When you sneak up behind Calcelmo, you have to be careful. The man is high-strung. He yells at his nephew Icantar constantly. He's paranoid about his research, but if you manage to slip your hand into his robes without him noticing, you are touching the inventory of a man who has monopolized the history of an entire race. The most critical item in his pocket is the key to the Dwemer Museum. This is the core in-game fact that makes him a high-value target. The Dwemer Museum isn't just a collection of dusty pottery. It is the single densest concentration of Dwemer metal in the game. It is filled with struts, cogs, solid metal bowls, and weapons. For a player interested in the smithing skill, this museum is a gold mine, literally or rather dwarven metally. By stealing the key from Calcelmo, you bypass the need to persuade him or run errands for him. You can simply let yourself in at night, sneak past the guards, and loot the place bare. The amount of scrap metal you can smelt down from his exhibits is enough to outfit an entire army in legendary dwarven armour. You're essentially stealing his life's work and turning it into ingots. Calcelmo's personal inventory also reflects his obsessive funding. He carries a significant amount of gold, likely the research grants provided by Jarl Igmund. But the real wealth he possesses is his algorithmic awareness. This leads to one of the most enduring community memes and debates regarding Calcelmo, his psychic courier network. Every player knows this feeling. You delve into a random dungeon, find a dwarven arrow or a scrap of metal, and within hours, a courier runs up to you, even if you are in the Solcairn or the throat of the world, with a letter from Calcelmo. "I hear you found a dwarven item," he writes, offering to buy it. This implies that Calcelmo has a surveillance network that rivals the Penitus Oculatus, or the Thalmor. He knows what is in your pocket the moment you pick it up. The sheer amount of gold he must spend on couriers and spies to track every piece of dwarven junk in Skyrim is staggering. When you rob him, you are robbing the man who is trying to buy the entire province one cog at a time. There is a piece of obscure lore, or rather a specific quest item connection, that highlights his intellectual wealth. Calcelmo is the author of the Dwarves book series, volumes 1 through 3, which you find all over Skyrim. He is a published academic with tenure. But more importantly, during the Thieves Guild quest, Hard Answers, we learn that Calcelmo possesses the Rosetta Stone of Skyrim, a stone tablet that translates the Falmer language. He is the only person in the world who has cracked the code. He keeps this tablet in his private laboratory, behind a gauntlet of guards, traps and poison gas. He guards his intellectual property with lethal force. The key in his pocket opens the doors to this lab. By stealing it, you are gaining access to the only known translation of a lost language. Knowledge that to the right buyer, like the Thieves Guild, is worth more than diamonds. Calcelmo's wealth is also tied to his nepotism. His nephew Icantar stands nearby, usually terrified. Icantar also carries a copy of the museum key. It's often easier to pickpocket the nephew, who has lower perception, but robbing Calcelmo himself is the power move. It asserts dominance over the master wizard. The inventory of Calcelmo also tells a story of a man who is deeply lonely despite his riches. In the quest The Book of Love, we discover that Calcelmo is hopelessly in love with Feline, the housecarl of the Jarl. He is paralysed by anxiety, unable to speak to her. He tries to use his intelligence to win her, writing poetry that is, well, complex. If you intervene, you can help him. But if you rob him before this, you might find a ring of gold or silver in his pocket, perhaps a gift he bought for her but never had the courage to give. It adds a layer of sadness to the theft. You're stealing the engagement ring of an old man who is married to his work but longing for connection. Mechanically, Calcelmo is also a merchant, selling spells and soul gems. Like other wizard merchants, if you buy his expensive spell tomes, like Wall of Flames or Thunderbolt, the gold goes into his pocket. Stealing it back immediately is the classic 5-finger discount on higher education. One of the funniest aspects of robbing Calcelmo is the environment. You're in Understone Keep. The background noise is a constant rhythmic thumping of steam pistons. It's loud. Yet, if you fail the pickpocket check, Calcelmo spins around with supernatural speed. "What do you think you're doing?" he screeches. For a man who spends his life staring at dead rocks, his reflexes are sharp. It reinforces the idea that he is guarding his hoard with the jealousy of a dragon. The museum itself, which the key unlocks, is a masterclass in environmental storytelling. It shows the progression of his research, from simple tools to the massive operational centurion that stands guard in his lab. When you walk through there, after stealing the key, you realise that Calcelmo isn't just studying the Dwemer, he's trying to become them. He surrounds himself with brass and steam, isolating himself from the Nords and the Reachmen. He has built a golden cage, and we are the burglars rattling the bars. It's also worth noting that Calcelmo sends thugs after you if you steal from him. If you take a Dwemer cup from his table, he will hire 3 hired thugs to hunt you down. The contract will be signed by him. This proves he has disposable income set aside specifically for vengeance. He doesn't call the guards, he calls a hit squad. That is the behaviour of a mob boss, not a librarian. As we leave Understone Keep, the heavy bronze doors clanging shut behind us, we have the keys to the museum and a pocket full of research grants. We have looted the past, we have outsmarted the smartest man in Markarth, but we are done with the lonely hoarders. We are done with the damp caves and the dusty museums. We need to go where the people are. We need to go to a party. High in the mountains of Harfingar, overlooking the Sea of Ghosts, lies a fortress that is technically foreign soil. The Thalmor embassy is hosting a diplomatic reception. The wine is flowing, the bards are playing, and the guests are the wealthiest, most influential traitors in Skyrim. Among them is a man who is having a very, very good time. He is drunk, he is loud, and he is a distraction waiting to happen. But he is also a guest of the High Elves, which means his pockets are filled with the kind of loot you find at a black tie gala. We are going to find Raistlin. He is the life of the party, and he's about to unknowingly fund our next adventure. Put on your party clothes, hand your weapons to Delphine, and let's crash the embassy. We leave the sweaty, steam-filled halls of Markarth's Understone Keep and breathe in the frigid, razor-sharp air of the northern coast. We are travelling to the mountains of Harfingar, high above Solitude. The road is treacherous, winding through snowdrifts and past frost trolls that would happily tear a traveller to shreds. But we aren't dressed for battle. We have stashed our Daedric armour and our dragonbone bow in a secure chest, or handed them off to a nervous wood elf named Malbon. We are wearing fine clothes. We are wearing party boots. We are about to crash the most exclusive, dangerous and wealthy social event in the province. We are attending the cocktail party at the Thalmor embassy. The quest diplomatic immunity is a favourite among thieves because it forces a change of pace. You cannot brute force your way through the front door. You have to walk in with an invitation, smile at the guards who want to enslave humanity, and mingle. The main hall of the embassy is a concentration of wealth that is almost suffocating. The air smells of expensive Altmer wine, roasted pheasant, and the distinct metallic scent of political fear. Scanning the room, you see the greatest hits of Skyrim's elite. Depending on the state of the civil war and your quest progress, you might see Maven Black-Briar swirling her drink, Erikur hitting on the waitstaff, Jarl Sidgeir looking bored, or General Tullius trying to avoid Elenwen. It is a room full of people whose pockets we have already discussed or looted, but there is one man here who stands out. He's loud, he's red-faced, and he is complaining that the hostess is being stingy with the booze. This is Razelan. And while he looks like a drunken buffoon, he is our primary target for tonight, both for his inventory and for the chaotic opportunity he provides. Razelan is a high-ranking merchant of the East Empire Company. This is the core in-game fact that explains his presence. The Thalmor are snobs of the highest order. They do not invite random drunks to their diplomatic summits. They invite power. The East Empire Company is the largest mercantile organisation in Tamriel, controlling the shipping lanes and the trade tariffs across the continent. Razelan is their representative in Skyrim. This means that the stumbling, slurring man in the centre of the room is essentially a corporate executive for the Amazon of the Elder Scrolls universe. When you slide up behind Razelan, careful to avoid the gaze of the Thalmor wizards guarding the room, and check his pockets, you find the inventory of a man who travels in luxury. He carries a significant amount of gold, the travel stipend of an executive. He often wears high-value jewellery, rings and necklaces that sparkle under the chandelier light. But the real wealth of Razelan is his status. He represents the fact that money transcends war. The Empire is fighting the Stormcloaks, the Thalmor are pulling the strings, but the East Empire Company is still shipping glass, ebony and spices, and Razelan is here to ensure the profits keep flowing. There is a piece of obscure lore hidden in his dialogue and the surrounding context. If you speak to him, he mentions his relationship with the other guests. He is surprisingly well connected. He knows who everyone is, he knows the politics, but more importantly, his presence hints at the economic stranglehold the Thalmor are trying to exert. The Thalmor aren't just military conquerors, they are economic imperialists. By hosting the East Empire Company, Elenwen is signalling that the Dominion intends to control the coin as well as the crown. Razelan is the personification of collaboration for profit. He hates the party, he hates the Thalmor, but he is there because business demands it. This leads to a popular fan theory. Is Razelan actually a spy? Some players argue that his drunk persona is a little too perfect. He's loud enough to be noticed but dismissed as a threat. He wanders around freely. He talks to everyone. Is it possible that Razelan is an agent for the Empire, or perhaps even the Blades, using his cover as a boorish merchant to gather intelligence on Elenwen? When he agrees to cause a distraction for the Dragonborn, he does it with surprising readiness. "I can do that," he says, almost as if he's been waiting for a signal to disrupt the proceedings. The theory suggests he is the drunken master of espionage, the smartest man in the room pretending to be the dumbest. But let's talk about the heist. Robbing the embassy party is a unique mechanical challenge because you have no backup gear. If you get caught pickpocketing Razelan, you can't just chug 10 potions and summon a Dremora Lord. You are vulnerable. The guards in the room are level-scale Thalmor soldiers and wizards. If a fight breaks out here, you die. This turns every pickpocket attempt into a high-stakes gamble. You are slipping a diamond ring off Razelan's finger while Elenwen, one of the most powerful mages in the game, stands 10 feet away discussing the white gold concordat. The tension is delicious. The other guests are also ripe for the picking. If you haven't robbed them in their home cities, this is your chance to hit them all at once. Jarl Idgrod Ravencrone of Morthal often carries unique items. On Dolomar, the Justicia from Markarth might be there, carrying Thalmor orders. It's a buffet of pockets. However, the most ironic theft involves Elenwen herself. While she is often flagged as essential and difficult to interact with in a pickpocketing sense during the party, due to her script, glitching or manoeuvring to check her inventory reveals she carries nothing of value. The leader of the Thalmor in Skyrim carries no gold, no keys, no items. She's purely an administrator. Her power is entirely external. She owns the building, the guards, and the guests, so she needs nothing in her pockets. The climax of our interaction with Raslan is the distraction. We bribe him with a drink, usually a bottle of Colovian brandy or just some wine we swiped from the counter. In exchange, he stands on a bench and makes a speech. I propose a toast to Elenwen and her hospitality. He draws every eye in the room. The guards converge on him. The guests gasp. In that moment of chaos, while Raslan is being berated by Malbon and the guards, the room's collective attention shifts. This is the window. A master thief doesn't just use this moment to slip out the back door, they use it to do one last sweep. While the guards are focused on the drunk, you can lift the purse of the distracted Jarl standing next to you. You can swipe a silver goblet from the table. You can strip Raslan of his gold while he's in the middle of his speech, effectively making him pay for the drink you just gave him. There is a distinct pleasure in looting the Thalmor embassy. This is the headquarters of the faction that bans the worship of Talos, the faction that hunts down your friends, the faction that is essentially the thought police of Tamriel. Stealing their silverware, their food, and the personal wealth of their guests feels like a small act of rebellion. You're defiling their sanctuary of order. You're introducing chaos into their perfect high elf world. As we slip through the kitchen door, leaving Raslan to face the wrath of the hostess, we move from the party into the dungeon. We retrieve our gear, we fight our way through the interrogation chambers, and we escape into the snow. We leave behind a room full of lighter pockets and bruised egos, but we have one final target. We have robbed the mortals of Skyrim. We have robbed the rich, the powerful, the magical, and the corrupt. Now we must turn our eyes to a legend. We must find the warrior who has done everything we have done, but better. He is waiting for us. Not in a city, not in a palace, but on a mountaintop. He is the end of the game. He is the mirror image of the Dragonborn. He has completed every quest, slain every monster, and enchanted every piece of gear. And he wants to die. But before we grant him his warrior's death, we're going to see what a man carries when he has beaten the world. We're going to the last vigil. We're going to meet the Ebony Warrior. Prepare yourself. This is the only pickpocket target who can shout you off the side of a mountain if he catches you. We have travelled from the warm golden plains of Whiterun to the fog-choked canals of Riften. We have walked the polished marble floors of the Blue Palace and the ash-covered dunes of Solstheim. We have picked the pockets of the greedy, the corrupt, the magical, and the mad. But every journey must have an end. Every thief eventually runs out of pockets to pick, and in the frozen peaks of the Velathi Mountains, at a place marked on no map save for the one in your quest log, stands the final challenge. We are heading to a location known ominously as the Last Vigil. The wind here screams across the jagged rocks, loud enough to drown out the sound of your own heartbeat. The air is thin, stinging the lungs with every breath. There are no guards here to bribe, no shadows to hide in, and no walls to scale. There is only snow, silence, and a solitary figure standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out over the world he has already conquered. This is the Ebony Warrior. If you are seeing him, it means you have achieved the impossible. You have reached level 80. You have done it all, and so has he. The Ebony Warrior is the game's way of acknowledging that you have become a god, and then asking, but are you the strongest god? He is a red guard of immense stature, clad in terrifyingly beautiful heavy armour, waiting for one last good fight so he can die with a sword in his hand, and earning his ticket to Sovngarde. But we aren't here to give him the warrior's death he craves, at least not yet. We are here to see what a man carries when he has beaten the game. We are here to commit the ultimate act of disrespect. We are going to rob the final boss blind before the duel even begins. Approaching the Ebony Warrior is a surreal experience. He doesn't attack on sight. He simply stands there, arms crossed or hands resting on his hips, waiting for you to initiate the conversation. This passivity gives the Master Thief a unique window of opportunity. You can crouch right behind him, in the middle of a blizzard, and open an inventory that represents the absolute pinnacle of Skyrim's economy. The Ebony Warrior is a walking treasury. His gear isn't just high level, it is the best possible gear the game can generate for an NPC. He wears a full set of ebony armour, helmet, cuirass, gauntlets and boots, but looking at the item descriptions reveals the true value. These aren't standard drops, they are enchanted with high-tier buffs: fortify health, fortify stamina, fortify one-handed, resistance to fire, frost and shock. He has essentially min-maxed his build. The core in-game fact that defines his loot is the sheer density of enchantments. Almost every slot on his body is filled with a magical effect. He carries an ebony sword of the vampire, absorb health, an ebony shield of fire suppression, and an ebony bow of winter. Mechanically, the resale value of his equipment is astronomical. If you were to strip him of everything and ferry it back to a merchant, assuming you could find one with enough gold to buy it, you would be looking at tens of thousands of septims in hardware alone. He is wearing the GDP of a small hold. But the wealth here goes beyond the septim value. It's about utility. In his pockets, you will often find a stockpile of potions of vigorous healing. He carries 5 to 10 of these at any given time. These aren't the weak potions you find on bandits. These are the ones that restore massive chunks of health instantly. He also carries high-quality arrows and frequently precious gems, diamonds, emeralds and rubies, that seem to serve no purpose other than to occupy space in his inventory. Perhaps they are trophies from his own adventures, loot he gathered from dungeons long forgotten. The act of pickpocketing the Ebony Warrior requires a pickpocket skill of 100, the perfect touch perk, and likely some gear that boosts your success chance, because his perception is razor sharp. But if you succeed, the result is the greatest anticlimax in gaming history. Imagine the scene. The Ebony Warrior stands tall, a monolith of black metal against the white snow. He turns to face you, expecting a clash of steel that will shake the foundations of Nirn. He draws his weapon, but he has no weapon. You stole his sword. Confused, he raises his fists. He moves to brace himself, but he has no armour. You stole his cuirass. You have stripped the greatest warrior in Tamriel down to his undergarments in sub-zero temperatures. The epic duel to the death turns into a fistfight with a naked man who is probably very cold and very confused. It is the ultimate thief's victory. You didn't beat him with strength, you beat him by deleting his assets. This brings us to the rich bed of obscure lore and community debate surrounding his identity. Who is this guy? He is a Redguard, yet he towers over every other NPC in the game. His scale is set to 1.2 in the game files, making him a giant among men. And strangely, for a Redguard, he is obsessed with Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife. Redguards usually go to the far shores. This discrepancy has led to wild theories. Some fans believe he is the avatar of Raiment Ebenarm, the god of war, and the enemy of all Daedra, who has come to challenge the Dragonborn. Others think he's a previous protagonist, the Nerevarine from Morrowind or the champion of Cyrodiil before the Shivering Isles incident, who has wandered the world seeking a worthy opponent. But the most poignant theory is that the Ebony Warrior is simply you. He represents the player character at the end of a playthrough, overpowered, wealthy beyond measure, having completed every quest, explored every dungeon, and now standing around bored, waiting for something, anything to happen. His inventory reflects this. He carries the best stuff because he has nothing else to work for. He has reached the cap. When you rob him, you're essentially robbing your own reflection. You're taking the endgame loot that you have spent hundreds of hours grinding for. There is a specific interaction involving his use of the voice. The Ebony Warrior can shout. He uses unrelenting force and disarm. This implies he is Dragonborn, or at least has studied with the Greybeards, though they never mention him. This adds an intangible layer to his wealth. He possesses the currency of power. He speaks the language of dragons. He is your equal in almost every way. If you engage him in combat without stealing his gear, he fights with a ferocity that is unmatched. He reflects damage, a perk usually reserved for the player. He heals himself. He paralyzes you. But if you have taken his potions and his ring of resistance first, you have crippled him. You have used the economy of the game to dismantle the difficulty of the game, standing over the defeated body of the Ebony Warrior, naked or armoured. Looking through his loot one last time, you find the final irony. He carries keys, but they don't open anything. There is no Ebony Warrior's house. He has no home. He has no family. He has no quest giver. All that wealth, the enchanted armor, the diamonds, the potions, was for nothing. It didn't save him. It didn't make him happy. It was just weight he had to carry up the mountain. As the Dragonborn stands there, the loot transferred to their own heavy pockets, the realization hits. You are now the one standing on the mountain. You are the one with the inventory full of unique items, millions of septims, and no one left to fight. You have become the secretly rich NPC that the next adventurer will want to rob. The cycle continues. The loot flows from one pocket to another, from the merchant to the thief, from the emperor to the assassin, from the warrior to the god. Wealth in Skyrim is never truly owned. It is just held for a moment, waiting for someone with a faster hand and a higher pickpocket skill to come along and redistribute it. We have cleared the map. We have emptied the vaults. The weight of our carry capacity is maxed out. It is time to head home, to Breeze Home, or Lakeview Manor, or the Archmage's quarters. It is time to dump this fortune into a chest and close the lid. The fire in the hearth has burned down to glowing embers, casting a soft, pulsing orange light across the room. The shadows are long now, stretching out from the corners to wrap around us like a warm blanket. The wind outside, whether it's the howling gales of the Velothi Mountains or the gentle breeze of the Falkreath forests, is just a muffled hum, a reminder that we are safe, warm, and sheltered. We've been on quite a journey tonight, haven't we? We started in the bustling markets of Whiterun, laughing at Nazeem's arrogance. We slipped through the misty shadows of Riften, lifting keys from the Black-Briars. We walked the high halls of Solitude, touching the robes of emperors and vampires. We ventured into the ash of Solstheim and the deep stone of Markarth. And finally, we stood at the top of the world, looking into the eyes of a warrior who had everything and took it all away. It's a lot to carry, all that gold, all those keys, all those stories. But now you can set it down. You don't need to crouch anymore. The stealth eye is closed, the guards aren't looking for you. The inventory menu is shut. Feel the weight of the armor falling away. Let the tension in your shoulders unspool, like a lockpick turning smoothly in a novice latch. The adventure is over for today. The loot is sorted, the merchants are asleep, the dragons have returned to their mountaintops, and the roads are quiet. Take a deep breath, letting the cool, imaginary air of Skyrim fill your lungs, and then let it out slow and steady. The world of Tamriel will still be there when you wake up. The rivers will flow, the moons Mercer and Secunda will orbit, and the coins will wait in their purses. But for now, the only thing you need to steal is a few hours of rest. No quick saves needed here. Just peace. Sweet dreams.